It is difficult for any right thinking person to underestimate the gravity of what happened in Dublin city centre last Thursday evening as a sequel to the awful assault on the children and their carer, and then the subsequent riot which consumed the streets of Dublin in a totally destructive fashion for quite a long time after that event. This was a remarkable event. All the more for a number of reasons which have not occurred, certainly in any recent times, in relation to public disorder. In that, guards who were protecting the scene of this awful assault were attacked by the mob. This is almost unprecedented in the history of this country of 101 years that would happen. Obviously, there were some attacks on Garda stations and along the border and other situations during the Troubles. But this is the first time in the centre of the city of Dublin, in broad daylight to start with, that this attack took place on the guard. So it is a remarkable event for that. It also exposed the commercial centre of Dublin, the people frequenting it, and the guards themselves to totally unconscionable risk, and the damage was obvious. Indeed, individual Gardaí were isolated and attacked and assaulted. And many arrests were made, as is appropriate, and of course they're before the courts, so it's on the courts to deal with them. But this was an extraordinary situation, and it requires extraordinary cool heads to look at that. And particularly I'm interested in the strategic input of the Minister for Justice and the Garda Commissioner, and I will discuss the implications and the questions that arise in relation to that kind of strategic command in my next remarks. It's important to consider that the Minister for Justice and the Commissioner of the Garda Síochána have the strategic control of the Garda Síochána as part of their responsibility through their offices. Obviously, the Minister has the political end of that equation, but also the Minister has very direct power in relation to what the Garda Commissioner does. Not always widely reported, but the Commissioner has a very direct reporting line both to the Secretary General of the Department of Justice and to the Minister. So they are, metaphorically speaking, joined at the hip in many respects. So the question for both of those individuals is, have you read the signs? Did you not understand that something really bad was coming down the road in relation to the signs that you had already seen in relation to dissent and the various demonstrations and the manifestations around the city, the events outside Dáil when it returned after the summer, all of that? Did you not see, and were your intelligence reports not indicating that there was something really different and dangerous happening? Effectively, and one would expect in the normal course of events, that is the Commissioner's role to develop a playbook in relation to contingency items, and that will relate to public order. And that playbook should easily contain a definite public order preventative structure within the Garda Síochána, i.e. dedicated groups of men and women specially trained in public order techniques, equipped both with personal equipment and mobile equipment, including the use of water cannon and all of that necessarily protective gear to help them to deal with these kind of situations. And of course the rank and file, the front of house guards, should have their own personal protective equipment, both in terms of helmets and protective clothing, to allow them to respond in a way that allows them to act in the public interest but in safety to themselves. And into that comes a whole panoply of other things like tasers, like cameras, body worn cams, all of that. So the question is that in the Commissioner's playbook, was that contemplated as the appropriate, both the technical equipment of a public order unit, specialists, and the general equipment of the guards themselves? And effectively, what was or is the level of training amongst the more senior commanders in the Guards in relation to public order? Again, what is the playbook? Where were the instructions? Had they been rehearsed? Had they been practiced? And that is a very valid point to make, because for many, many years, Indeed, long before current times, there was a very strong public order component in the Guards, which again developed out of difficult situations that indicated it was necessary to do that. So that playbook was obviously one that should have been well thumbed through, because there's criteria about how you respond to situations. And okay, the criteria are probably three singular criteria. One is the difficulty of the operation, the frequency of which something occurs, and the importance. Now, oftentimes, and I hope it's not the case in this case, because this kind of public disorder and riot is infrequent, that the other two issues, the difficulty and the importance, were neglected because of the frequency. I'm not saying they were, it's for the Commissioner and the Minister to explain what the playbook was. And the second part of this analysis, and using the same approach, the playbook, it is obvious that there are a group of anarchists in this country, sometimes referred to as right-wing or left-wing or wherever, but in any case there's a group who by their actions clearly do not intend to take part in a normal political protest, in a normal discourse with the community or with the politicians. And their intent, and by their actions, is to sow discontent, to visit violence, and to undermine the institutions of the state. Now, the Garda Síochána is well versed in how to handle, and certainly they were, how to handle individual groups with that kind of fascist ideology. And of course, it relates to the ability to monitor their social media postings, to have surveillance on them, both actual and real, to use modern technology for that purpose, to be able to launch in timely event investigations into their activities, and of course to bring them before court where that is where that is appropriate. But really, going back to both the Minister and the Commissioner, both would be well aware that the Guards have been riven with crisis for the last number of years. I mean, it is very unusual in the history of the Guards, probably unprecedented, that over 90% voted no confidence in the Commissioner of the day. It's also incredible that sergeants and inspectors marched to the gates of Dublin 8 to Garda headquarters, held a public meeting and handed in a letter of protest. And then more remarkably, in recent times, and very recent times, is when vacancies occurred for second most senior position in the Garda Síochána, that a deputy commissioner, no one of the eligible officers applied. Now, these are not normal times, but maybe there is explanations, and maybe there is a rationale that will explain how we got to this particular place. The last thing I'd say on it is that the inevitable question that arises in situations like this is a simple one, is what is the likelihood of it happening again? And frankly, on the evidence before our eyes, we have to say that if there isn't some radical change of a systematic and strategic kind, that there is every likelihood of it happening again, because we have got this group of anarchists in our midst